Greetings, everyone. We'll give it a few seconds for folks to join, but a big hello from Indianapolis, Indiana. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are calling in from today. My name is Leslie Grishin. I work in the international office at Indiana University, Indianapolis, and it is my great pleasure to welcome everyone to the call today as we are here to share our final webinar for the fall semester inside IUI Global. Today's topic is video production and sound design. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items for everyone on the call today. We will have a wonderful presentation from our speaker, have time for some Q&As relating to the topic. I'll share a little bit about IU Indianapolis, and then we'll have time to wrap up any final questions about the presentation today. We are broadcasting live via Streamlab, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, so be sure to check us out on the chat. Let us know where you're tuning in from today. This will be viewable later on our Facebook page as well, if you need to hop off and rejoin later. So as you can see, we do have a comment in a chat box. I see some chats going in there already. Welcome, everyone. We would love to remind everyone that we can see your chats, so this is a great place to drop in your questions. Let us know where you're calling in from today. Ask questions about the topic or the speaker, and we'll monitor those to share with him later during the Q&A session. We'll be following up after the webinar today to share out certificates for those who joined the full webinar today. So thanks again. We're excited to have you on the call. As I said before, this is our final webinar for the fall, but we will be coming back in the spring. So we're excited to bring a wide range of topics next spring for you all. So stay connected with us, and we'll be able to share out those dates very soon. And finally, on behalf of Indiana University, Indianapolis, and the Office of International Affairs, it is my great pleasure to introduce our speaker today. So I'd like to send a warm welcome over to C. Thomas Lewis, the Senior Lecturer and Media Arts and Science Director in the Media Arts and Science undergraduate programs in the Luddy School of Informatics, Computing, and Engineering at IU Indianapolis. So Thomas, over to you and welcome. So excited to hear about the topic today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That is quite a mouthful, isn't it? And greetings, everyone. Thank you for joining us for what is 7:30 in the morning, my time, our time here in Indiana on a chilly morning. So like Leslie was saying, my name is Thomas Lewis. The C stands for Charles, but I don't tell a lot of people, but I just did. And I'm the Program Director of Media Arts and Science, Senior Lecturer, and I teach video-related things. That was my passion before I came here, and I worked in the industry in Los Angeles for quite a while before coming here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Throughout this presentation, I've sprinkled some photos of different courses or different instances from a course. This one is a lighting and field class that I teach. So in this class, and I'll talk about it a little bit more detail, we make a film during class throughout the semester. So we're on various locations around the city. So that's what you see here. So I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail as we go along. So in Media Arts and Science, we have these 5 specializations, which I'm sure you can see on our website, and I will be talking about video production and sound design, which, like I said, I'm very passionate about. But before we get started, I want to make a distinction between something that we call here in the United States ENG, electronic news gathering, versus a filmmaker model. And the distinction is quite important because it relates to what we teach and what we don't teach. So I want people to understand that. So another shot from another location. Students have a lot of fun going out and playing these, performing in these different roles on a film crew. So electronic news gathering. So that is what we might think of as run and gun shooting, field shooting. It is largely for television, TV news broadcast kind of training in the United States. It's frequently in films, in journalism schools or a journalism department in a school like a liberal arts school. It's for training students in how to produce the local news quite, if I had to sum it up. It is not what we do. So there are, of course, there's a lot of crossover, a lot of similar skills, but it's specifically, that is not what this model is based on. What our model is based on is a filmmaker model, which comes out of a different tradition, a tradition of documentary and narrative film largely. Excuse me. So that it's a very different thing. And I come from a background where it's very much about the individual filmmaker who has a lot of different skills and wears a lot of different hats in the process. So it's good to be well-rounded and have skills in shooting, editing, storytelling, lighting, all these different things in order to make a film that comes out of the tradition of documentary, telling stories about real life, or narrative film, where we're working with actors and creating our stories. But there's also another component to this filmmaking tradition, and that is experimental filmmaking. So since the beginning of filmmaking, there has been experimental filmmaking. So we have a space for that too, and I'll speak about that as I move along here. So here's a shot in our sound booth. So we have a little sound recording studio here in our school, and you can see somebody in there doing some voiceover, and in the foreground you can see the Pro Tools setup where they're recording the voiceover. So a little bit of background on me. So I see that my slides are not displayed on this system exactly how they were designed. I didn't put my photo on top of my name, but so just to give you a visual, this is me, maybe a little bit older than you are right now. So 1983, I'm 19, and it's my first year in undergraduate school. And I'm at Kent State studying photojournalism. So I'm going to do a kind of lengthy introduction about me, my journey, as a way to explain why I've created the curriculum the way I have. So Kent State, very well known in the United States for a tragic incident in 1970, where there was a shooting on our campus, and it became a kind of famous place because of that. But it's also had a really good journalism school. So I was there in the journalism school, but I would go watch films on campus. Almost every week I would go watch films where they taught film. And I would see these filmmakers, film students there, and to be quite candid, they were very intimidating to me. They sort of, they had their 16 millimeter cameras, and they had this sort of bravado and confidence and conviction about them. I was very intrigued about filmmaking, but that just scared the bejesus. It was very intimidating, but I was very curious about it. I ended up transferring to a school at the time that was the Philadelphia College of Art, but then my first year became the University of the Arts, and that's in Philadelphia, where I continued to study photography, but this time not photojournalism, but art photography. But on the same floor was the film program. So here I started taking every film class I could. It was a much smaller program, and it was a very welcoming program, something I never forgot. It was also very experimental. It was led by an experimental filmmaker named Peter Rose, and it was all experimental. I don't know if anyone made any sort of narrative film or a conventional documentary there. Everything that we did was all about sort of personal expression and personal exploration using film, which is great, but it does have some drawbacks. So from there, after a couple of years, I went to grad school at Cal Arts. So Cal Arts is a famous art school here north of, about 25 miles north of Los Angeles. You might know that you've heard of Tim Burton, I'm sure. He went there. And Steve Hillenburg from SpongeBob creation, he went there. A lot of famous people went there. Has a great film school, but again, 3 years of an MFA at very experimental film school. So that has its drawbacks. So suddenly reality crashes in a bit. I graduate and realize I've had very little practical training in production at all. I was never required to shoot an interview. I was never instructed in how to shoot an interview. I never heard of something called A/B rolling. I don't know what your level of familiarity is with production, but in documentary, that's foundational knowledge. That is basic foundational knowledge to telling a story through the documentary tradition. I wasn't trained in how to structure a conventional story. I was certainly trained in how to structure a lot of experimental films, but I wasn't trained in how to structure a story in sort of mainstream media type way. So I frequently ask myself this question: why didn't I learn this in my expensive education? I should have been taught this, because I got out and the reality was I needed to pay the rent. And I have no connections to Los Angeles because the school is 25 miles north. And I had no reel to show. I had nothing to enter that world with, no connection to that production world. So in a way, I just spent 3 years making what I thought was a great film, exploring all this stuff about myself and the world through a sort of experimental perspective, which I certainly don't want to bash. It's great, and I think I need to make room. I needed to make room for that in this program, but at the same time, you have to be aware of the sort of practical training that is necessary to get a job, because you do have to pay the rent when you get out. So let's see here. So I went off on a freelance search for jobs. One of the first questions was, "Oh, can you submit your interviews, that you've shot for us?" And I was like, "Interviews? Okay, I don't have any interviews." So I shot an interview, and I hadn't even been trained enough in how to even present that professionally. I just gave them the interview. Here you go. I didn't put it in a reel. I didn't do anything. I just, here you go. So what I had to do was get additional job training. I had to go. I was living in Los Angeles at that time. I had to seek out another program that would give me the practical training to work in that industry. I thought, this is ridiculous. I just basically mortgaged my future for that MFA, and I have to go get some training. So that is not good. But you get the job, you learn on the job. And I'll say the one advantage of going to a school like that is you make connections, and those connections can serve you. So I ended up opening an editing business in Hollywood, Hollywood and Vine, right smack in the middle of Hollywood. I had an editing business with a partner from school where we worked for 3 years editing all kinds of things. So I very much learned on the job. And then I was able to eventually sort of parlay that into something for Warner Brothers, where I worked on the Harry Potter franchise for 8 years, producing the bonus material on all the DVDs, and then the Blu-rays. So I did that for a very long time. And that is where I learned. So on that job, I learned about A/B roll editing. I learned about how to tell a story. I learned all this stuff that I wish I had learned during my degree and could have brought to the table to that job at the beginning. But instead, I was learning on the job, which was great. I was glad to finally be learning these practical skills. It was a big aha moment for me, where I found out, oh, there's actually a process to this. It's like in a documentary, you use those interviews and you find that story and you structure that story from the interviews, and then you B-roll it with all the additional footage that you have. This was news to me. I didn't know this at all. So I learned on the job, and it was great that I learned on the job, and I loved it, and it was hard, and it was a great job, but it was also 7 days a week and a lot of stress. But it was definitely being thrown into the fire and learning a lot. Again, another shot from another location. Students in this class, they rotate through different crew positions throughout the semester, so they get a chance to learn each job on a set. And they're also afforded the luxury of having a crew. So a lot of times students, the big thing is they come to a program, whatever it is, and their experience initially is making a film by themselves or a couple other people, and they don't have the luxury of what it's like to work with a film crew where everyone has a dedicated role. So they get this opportunity where, depending on the size of the class, there might be 8 people on a crew, there might be 10 people on a crew, there might be 12 people on the crew. Often we split it into 2 groups. So they're shooting films simultaneously, but in different locations around the town, around Indiana. And my graduate assistant will go with one group, I'll go with the other. We'll switch over every week, and we shoot this film. It's a very popular class. Students really like it a lot, and they get a lot of practical hands-on experience. Okay. So what I just told you really informed me when I came here in 2009. I've been here in 2009. Since then, at that time, there were like 3 or 4 video classes. That's it. And my experience really informed how I went about developing additional classes and building out that curriculum with an emphasis on this practical training, but I still want to have room for theory and experimentation. So combining those to get the best of both of them, and not just a more sort of esoteric education that is not preparing people for the real world. So that way, when students graduate, the crashing in of the real world is not as extreme. They don't feel it in such an extreme way as I did. So that's very important to me. So I give a lot of hands-on experiential learning. So some of that you just saw in that lighting and field production class, very much hands-on every week. So that class will start out with the first 5 weeks. Students are developing their story, their writing, and what we kind of crowdsource the script. So everybody writes a version of a story. We pick the best one. Everyone writes a version of that script. We pick the best one. And then we start on all the pre-production of figuring out who's going to act in it. We bring in actors, audition actors. We find locations. Everyone's sort of pulling in their personal resources that they have to try to figure out what we can make. And we shoot that over the course of 6 days in the semester of shooting days. So at the shooting day we'll meet at school, and I just set my clock, my watch. How fast can we have everything loaded up in the car and get to location, and can we get the first shot off in under an hour? So it's very much about speed and efficiency and working within just your role, because this is the biggest thing that students want to do in this class is help everybody else. It's not your job to help everybody else, because if you're helping somebody else, you're not doing your job. So it's about learning to stay on task, which is a big thing, because once they get that, they're far more efficient. So we look at the time, how fast we can get there, how fast we can get off the shots, because the class is 2 hours and 40 minutes. And we have 6 shots. That's all you do, 6 setups for that scene, because it's all we have time for, to then load back in, get back to school before class is out. So we've got that down pretty well. And then the last 5 weeks, we go into editing. Everybody edits their own version of the film. And then we share them at the end. So it goes through editing and what we call finishing. So finishing is like the color grading, the sound mixing, the sound design, all that stuff. So they have a few weeks to do that. And then at the end, we watch them. So a lot of fun. That class is a lot of fun. Another experiential learning opportunity is study abroad. So I've been taking, along with my colleague Albert William, we've been taking students to Greece, the island of Paros. We've gone 6 times so far. We had to take off some time during COVID, obviously, but we've gone 6 times, and there we make films about life on the island. So anything from, we started off making a lot of films about archaeology and recreating. As part of that, we recreated a lot of buildings in 3D in Maya and used it as B-roll in our documentaries. Since then, we've moved on to just more contemporary topics, what's going on in terms of anything, like an animal hospital. We did a bird hospital, really, recently. The island had some fires a couple of years ago, a big fire. So we did a little documentary on the fire. So over those years, we have made, I think it's about 58 or 59 films so far. Taking students, maybe anywhere from 10 to 15 students. And we go in May and June, early June. And we make, for 3 weeks, we just shoot films. And then at the end of that 3 weeks, we have a big screening on the island where a lot of people who support us come out to see the films, and students find that incredibly rewarding. So by the time we leave, we're done. We don't bring any work back home. It's just finished. And the only thing left to do is we put Greek subtitles on it. That's something that Albert and I take care of. And then we have this collection of films. And you can see this collection of films at our website. So if you go to our website and find the Study Abroad for Greece, there'll be some links, and you'll see on Vimeo a big collection of the films that we made. I would encourage you to check those out. Another thing that we offer, of course, is internships. Again, something never had in my education. So finding an internship with some sort of video company here in town, a lot of students do that. If people would like to do that and then turn that into their capstone project, they can do that. They can take it as a capstone. They can also go to Greece as a capstone project. And then if they do that, they present in Greece during that night that we show our films. They have a presentation. So that's our experiential learning. The documentary filmmaking and theory component that I'm big on is in a course called Video for Social Change. So in Video for Social Change, and these are not all the classes that we offer, of course, but these are some I'm highlighting. So Video for Social Change is a course where students make a 10-minute documentary about a contemporary issue, maybe a controversial issue of some sort, or they can make a couple shorter videos for a nonprofit that they partner with during that semester. So something a nonprofit could use on their website. So that course also incorporates documentary theory. A wonderful book we use is a book called Introduction to Documentary by Bill Nichols. So he's a fabulous documentary theoretician. And we screen a lot of films and talk about those films through the lens of Bill Nichols' theory. And we talk about the creation of our own films through Bill Nichols' theory. So again, not just training, but also sort of theoretical education, theoretical approaches to filmmaking are very important. There's a narrative filmmaking class that also has a bit of theory, not as much so far. It's varied from year to year, to be honest. But the narrative filmmaking is a course called Digital Cinema. And it's a course where it varies from semester to semester, but typically, depending on the size of the class, 2 or 3 students are in a group and they make a narrative film that they have written. They do the whole thing, again, all the way through. So both the Video for Social Change course and the Digital Cinema course are the 400 level, sort of highest level courses in the documentary and in the narrative. We have sort of these tracks we could think of as a narrative track and a documentary track and an emerging media track. It's very informal, but I kind of think about that. I think of it that way as we structure it. So the third track, emerging video production, there's a course called Beyond the Frame. And so in this course, I do things like 360-degree stereoscopic video or branching video using an online tool called the Echo Studio, EKO Studio. You can find it online, where you make a video and you're given a choice at a certain point, A, B, C, D, and off you go in that direction, where you might have other choices, and you can seamlessly branch video. This particular course, you'll see below there, it says virtual production certificate. So this course is going to start accommodating a virtual production component. So very briefly, I'll just explain what virtual production is. It's probably the biggest thing to happen to video production since the advent of sound or color. It is a huge game changer that really came to the forefront due to COVID. And it's a way of production that uses either green screen or enormous LED walls. So if you know of The Mandalorian, it's the first show that really embraced this technology emphatically. So they would build these gigantic sets that were surrounded 360 degrees almost, with a wall that might be anywhere from 16 to 20 some feet tall that is just a seamless LED screen. And then they're shooting in front of it, and that's their background. And the camera has sensors. They're tracking the camera, so the background is moving appropriately. So there are different forms of virtual production. Another one would be shooting real people on a green screen, but tracking the camera and later compositing the background in, and it responds to the camera movements appropriately. So there are a lot of different types of virtual production. Some use real actors, some use 3D characters. But we're moving in that direction, and shortly we'll be we'll be purchasing and installing the facility to do this green screen type of virtual production, as we're currently sort of working on some proposals to get a larger video wall. It's an exciting development, and it will trickle down to indie level production. It already is, but it's something that is really pervasive now in production. So most things people see on TV in terms of narrative stuff anyway, a lot of that already uses this technology. And one advantage of it is you can do it on set. You don't have to go to location. And the other advantage is if you think about a scene that's maybe being shot inside and there's giant windows and you see the city in real life, the sun is moving. And that's always a pain in production because the light is changing all the time. But if that is a giant, image that you've put out there, the sun can just stay in one place and you're shooting under the same lighting conditions the whole time. So there are enormous advantages to virtual production. They're exciting, they're creative advantages as well as technical advantages. So all these backdrops, or most of them anyway, are made in a software made by Epic called Unreal, the Unreal game engine that is used in video games is being used in virtual production. So you have photorealistic backgrounds that are you can manipulate and change on the fly in terms of using like art direction changes in the moment. It has that flexibility. So it's exciting stuff, and there aren't a lot of places in film schools that are teaching it yet. It's really kind of a very new thing. So it will be, but production in general will be moving in that direction. So we will be teaching that. And lastly, I just want to mention the training. Another element of training is at our school, we use DaVinci Resolve. We're very much a Blackmagic design school. We use Blackmagic design cameras for the most part. And as students progress through the program, they get to more and more advanced cameras. In the images you saw, we were using an Ursa Mini, a 6K camera made by Blackmagic Design. But we teach DaVinci Resolve. And in a particular class that I have called Directorial Analysis and raw video production, that class, you can become certified in the color grading. So it's a class. We're doing several different things in this class, but one thing students are doing as they go through is they're taking the official training. So I've recorded all the chapters from the official training manual to study for taking the certification test. And then at the end of the semester, they take the certification test, which is a timed test of 50 random questions pulled from a pool of 150 questions. And that's the grade they get on their final exam. And hopefully they become certified. And a lot of students do become certified in color grading with DaVinci Resolve. So again, another practical skill that students can graduate with and find work in. So the next slide, you can see here, this is see, unfortunately, there are two slides stacked here, but this doesn't show them in both, but it's okay. They're very similar. So what you can see here are two new color bays that we've installed very recently. So I have a lab that's a video editing lab. We have about 10 computers, I think, just outside of this room in a larger space that all are iMacs that are using DaVinci Resolve. And then we have 2 dedicated finishing bays. So here's where you do your final color grading. These bays are painted a neutral gray, so they don't have any weird color biases. The monitors are calibrated, so you're getting the right color. And you can see here over his right shoulder, we have a Blackmagic. I don't know if you can see my mouse or not, but we have a Blackmagic mini console. So we use that. So the idea here is that Blackmagic makes these consoles where you color grade with buttons and those little knobs, balls, and stuff that you use. So you're using muscle memory and you can work faster. And then in front of him, he has a Blackmagic editing keyboard. So, and that's DaVinci Resolve on the screen there that he's using. So these 2 bays have just opened up. They still need some acoustic treatment in there, which hopefully will be coming soon, but they're functional bays. So we're quite excited to have those, and they're getting a lot of use right now. So yeah, the other photo was just kind of a different angle on this. But one thing we're going to move on to, I want to show a short film. But before I show this short film, I want to kind of introduce the thinking behind it. So often I have students who want to make narrative films, and sometimes producing a narrative film of sufficient quality might exceed their resources, whether it's their human resources, their financial resources, whatever it might be. A lot of times the dream is a little bit higher than what's attainable. It's this thing of like translating what they have in the scripts to the screen might exceed what they're able to do. So I really started advocating for a different approach to narrative film. So you're still telling a narrative story. It's not a documentary. It's a narrative story, though, that is driven by voiceover and then images that might be kind of a literal story being depicted somewhat, but also might incorporate a lot of metaphor and thinking about a different structural approach to telling a narrative film. So I was big on this before COVID came along, and then I got even bigger on it during COVID, because then everyone had serious restrictions on what kind of resources they could make use of. So this became something that became more popular with students to do during COVID, and I think it's a great way for students to still make a narrative film, but work within their resources. So what you're about to see is a film where, let's speak a little bit specifically about this film. The student was going to work with her sister, her much younger sister, who was an aspiring poet and thought she was a really, showed a lot of talent as a poet. So the sister was going to write a poem that was going to be the voiceover for the film. Except the sister was getting serious writer's block. And as the semester was ticking along, there was no poem. And then I'm like, okay, we're really going to have to figure out a plan B here, because we're halfway through the semester. Nothing's happened because there's no poem from your sister. So she went on SoundCloud and started listening to a lot of spoken word poetry. And she found one that she really liked. She reached out to the poet. Now, the one on SoundCloud has music and everything with it. Reached out to the poet, proposed this idea of making a film using his spoken word poetry as the driving force of it. And he gave her a version of it that was just his voice that she could then use as the soundtrack. So then she came up entirely with what you're about to see. And so towards the end of the semester, she showed it to me, and I, this is pretty good, but it's just missing something. And I said, what it's missing is a sense of metaphor. Like, where's the metaphor? A metaphor would really knock this out of the park. So she went back to the drawing board, came up with this idea, and then the next version I saw, I was just, wow, that's awesome, great. So let's watch this little capstone, and then we'll come back and I can start to answer any questions anybody has. So we'll go ahead and cue up the film. Here we go.
They say that ignorance is bliss. That's all I want. A spotless mind. Devoid of any regrets or doubts, no barriers of space or time. Memories forgotten like wisps in the wind, appearing for just a moment, and then never returning again. But that's just wishful thinking. Because honestly, most of the time we're on the brink of sinking, under the weight of all those wasted opportunities and regretful choices, all the things we've held back and all the things we've voiced, all that noise and all that silence, all those times that we should have done something but we didn't, held back by a false sense of defiance. You see, our lives are not shaped by just one thing or one decision. Instead, Our actions are like seeds, growing and branching out into a multiplicity of inevitabilities that combine to form the matrix of our existence. And whenever we try to intervene, we find that we simply get tangled up in the vines of all our limitless possibilities. We come to learn that it is the seemingly inconsequential events of our lives that truly end up defining our past and leading us to this present moment, to right here, right now, because that's all that matters. So don't fear the moment, own it. Don't be afraid to control it, because if all we have is right now, then you better get going and don't look back. Open up your palms and follow that map that you've carefully drawn out, and you'll soon find yourself breaking away from the very things you thought you'd never be able to live without. But don't jump out of your seat just yet. A great leader knows that every mile begins with the first step. Every inspiring speech begins with a single breath. And regardless of what others say, you alone are the architect of your own success. So build high and build fearlessly, because that foundation was there long before you realized it and will remain long after you forget. Oh, and by the way, you know when they say that good things come to those who wait? That's not true. Good things come to those who chase, those who embrace the uncertainty of what they do, those who fight just to get through the hard times, those who run across a field of landmines without blinking an eye, those who aren't afraid to cry to get through the pain. You see, our tears are the avenue through which our souls are cleansed. They are the feather-light droplets of purity that carry with them the weight of the world. And what's more is that they remind us that it's okay to be afraid of what lies at the end of life's great endeavors. Because even though some things never change, some things can change you forever.
That version has no credits at the end. So, okay. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I really enjoyed seeing that again. It's been a while. I guess right now, I think we could open up to questions anyone has.
Wonderful. Thank you, Thomas. So I do see a few questions in the chat. We have a question from Shirin Rao. Can you please elaborate on what you mean by black magic, and maybe share a little bit more about programs, things like that?
Absolutely. So let's say, so when I started teaching here, when I arrived, they taught Apple's Final Cut Pro video editing software, which was great because I knew it inside and out and really liked it and was wonderful. So I taught that for a long time. And then Apple introduced Final Cut X or 10 or whatever you want to call it. And overnight, the industry dropped Final Cut. It was not good. People just abandoned it in droves because it was so different. And it was not the workflow, the traditional timeline type workflow people were accustomed to. So I had to find an alternative. And I had a lot of graduates in LA that were saying to me at the time, you should have been teaching Avid. Everything is Avid. And Avid is a main video editing software used in the industry, mainly in television. So I started to teach Avid. Avid responded to Final Cut's misstep by slashing the price on it down to like a couple $100. So we could afford some licenses. And I started to teach Avid. And quite frankly, it was a nightmare on multiple levels. One, students hated it. And I had to field complaints daily about this software. And two, the way the licensing worked, our labs had to connect to Avid, and within our school, that was a very difficult thing to happen. So we'd try to edit in class, and half the students couldn't get the program activated because of the licensing protocol. So there were just a lot of issues, and I decided I need to find an alternative. And right then and there, Blackmagic, DaVinci Resolve is the product that they make for editing, and which has been an industry standard in color grading for a long time. It has a huge market. It wasn't owned necessarily by Blackmagic then. It was Resolve, DaVinci Resolve. Blackmagic bought it, and instead of being a specialty software, they made it into a software that anybody could use. And so I started to teach that. They had introduced editing in it, because before it was just video color grading. So they introduced editing in it. They're an Australian company. They bought up another Australian company called Fairlight. Fairlight is the competitor to Pro Tools in the editing audio world. When I worked for the Harry Potter DVD stuff, all that facility where I worked was a Fairlight facility. Everything was Fairlight audio. All the bays they had were Fairlight. Fantastic program. They bought it up. They incorporated it into DaVinci Resolve. So that's a whole audio suite just right into DaVinci Resolve. So, and then what they did is they had a free version, and they have a very inexpensive paid version called the studio version. So the free version, like I said, it's free, and it does probably 80% of what the paid version does. And that 80% probably covers most people's uses. Most amateur people's uses would be fine with the free version. The paid version is something like $299 US. And once you buy it, that's it. You get every upgrade. There's no subscription like Adobe. There's nothing like that. You buy it, you own it, you get every upgrade that ever comes out. Because Blackmagic Design is by and large a gear company. They make cameras, they make all kinds of high-end switchers for edit bay, all kinds of stuff if you go to their website. And that's where they make their money. They don't care about making money from DaVinci Resolve or much money. They want a wide user base. So they make it really affordable, and they don't play games like charging you a subscription. So the students at our school have free access to the Adobe Creative Suite. But as soon as they graduate, if they want to keep using it, they're suddenly paying a subscription. Whereas you graduate and you're still using your free version of DaVinci Resolve. And DaVinci Resolve, I think, as students who come to the program with experience in Premiere, which is pretty common, everyone should have some experience in Premiere. Once they start using DaVinci Resolve, they're like, oh, okay. They realize there's a whole big difference, and they like it a lot. I think that over the years that I've taught it, it's now in version 18. I've been teaching it, I think, since I want to say version 11, maybe something like that, a long time. I could probably count on one hand the number of complaints from students, and they're tiny. They're just like nitpicking, as opposed to daily complaints about Avid in every way I got. So the switch was great. Students love it. And like sort of like Apple has an ecosystem of their products, Blackmagic has a very much similar thing. So they're trying to build this entire suite of gear and the software that goes with it. And they give a lot of thought to their equipment, and they're very passionate and serious about making it affordable. It is not just lip service to affordability. The value in their cameras is incredible. For the images that they're generating and the price point that they're available, they're serious about making these affordable to people, as opposed to film production where everything costs a fortune. So for that reason too, I support them sort of philosophically, because they believe in that, and they do it, really do it. So hopefully that answered your question about
Wonderful.
I heard my cat come in. Maybe I had the door closed. Maybe I'm hearing things. Okay, so yes, if any more clarification, I'd be glad to give.
Oh, wonderful. And thank you, Kelly, for dropping the link in the chat so our audience can learn a little bit more about the program. Thomas, I'm going to hop over very quickly to share a little bit more about the admissions process and more about our campus, and then we'll be back in just a few minutes to answer some more questions. Please feel free to drop any questions in our chat, and then we'll be able to have Thomas answer those questions for anyone on the call today. So let me pull up the slide deck here. So we've been listening to wonderful information about specific programs within the Luddy School today on our campus, but I'd like to share a little bit more about our broader campus and all things IU Indianapolis. So we are a premier urban university for our students to study at one of the top schools in Indiana. We are transitioning at the moment from IUPUI and moving into a new era where we will be called Indiana University Indianapolis. So we're really excited to move forward, and from fall 2024, our students will be able to apply to Indiana University Indianapolis programs here, and I'll share a little bit more about that process and all of the opportunities that entails. We've had a presence in Indianapolis for quite some time, in fact, since 1895. And as we transition further into IU Indianapolis, we're excited to keep that going, continue to have top academic programs available to students, many opportunities, over 300 different programs for students to choose from. So a little bit more about our campus. We currently have about 30,000 students. And there are about 2,000 international students on our campus representing more than 100 countries. So it's really important for us to continue to welcome folks from all over the world to study in our programs. We really have a diverse campus, a beautiful city urban campus right in the heart of downtown Indianapolis. Even though we have a larger campus, it does feel smaller, and you have great opportunities to work closely with your professors. Thomas has been able to mention some great examples, especially with the study abroad programs within the classroom space and lab space. So our student faculty ratio is going to be 1 to 13, and the vast majority of our classes will actually have fewer than 30 students. So you will have that ability to connect with your professors, have that hands-on classroom experience, and really get to know your cohort as well. Moving on to the next slide here. So where I am based on campuses within the international office, and our goal is to provide support to our international students from admissions through graduation and beyond. We are really intent on providing a strong orientation program and welcoming our students to campus to make sure that we can share all of the opportunities, resources available, and help you be successful while you're studying in the US. We have a wide variety of programs available, starting with our orientation all the way through graduation and beyond. One of those that I'm really excited to talk a little bit more about is our peer mentoring program. So our students can be matched with a current student, and that really provides a lovely support system to learn from a senior student, hear their perspective, and settle into life in Indianapolis. We have activities and events throughout the semester where you can join in, build your community, and really experience and enjoy your time outside of the classroom as well. We have a wide variety of programs on our campus. And so there's going to be a wide variety of programs to choose from. The programs are going to be coming from 15 different schools. And we have so many options to have a double major, a major and a minor, different flexibility. Things can be in place to really create a program that is a good fit for you to help you plan for your future. We have bachelor's, master's, and doctoral programs, as well as a wide variety of certificates available. But one thing I wanted to emphasize was our accelerated programs, bachelor's to master's degree. programs. So that can help you earn a master's degree in a shorter amount of time. It can be more cost effective. And the Luddy School is a great example of some of our accelerated programs available on campus. So I'd encourage you to check out our website. Please go to the page for more information about the different accelerated bachelor's to master's degree programs. We are known for having top academic programs in the state of Indiana, nationally and globally ranked programs as well. Some of those are going to be in the areas of STEM, health science, the Kelley School of Business, and of course the Luddy School of Informatics, Computing, and Engineering. Our campus offers the only dental school in the state. We have the nation's largest nursing school and the largest medical school in the country. We also have a very large tech sector and research sector within our city. So our students are able to partner, look for internships. Some exciting co-op opportunities have recently been announced. So there are many ways to experience and research and plan for jobs after graduation and connect with our community. Some of those include the Biohealth Informatics Research Center and more. So follow us, stay connected with our campus, and we can gladly share more about the exciting things happening around campus and Indianapolis. So our location really is a big benefit for our students. We are in the heart of downtown, and we offer the ability to have all of those big city amenities, just minutes, just a short walk from our campus. So we're in the Midwest. Indiana is in the Midwest, so it's a very safe, affordable, comfortable place to live and study. But being in the heart of downtown, we are within a 5 to 10 minute walk to internship opportunities. You can check out a Pacers game or other sports event in the evening and more. Being the capital city, we really are the hub of economics, culture, and business for the state of Indiana. So this is going to highlight a few of the larger companies that we have in such a close proximity to our campus, including Salesforce, Eli Lilly Pharmaceuticals, Infosys, and more. Our job sector continues to grow, and it provides a lot of opportunity for our students to again, look for those internship opportunities, volunteer in the community, attend one of our really lovely cultural events. Sports are big in our city as well. So many of our students will have a chance to volunteer, attend, or join in one of the NBA games, Indy 500, the big race in May, and more. We have a large number of our students participating in internships and really great job placement rates after graduation. Currently, Indianapolis ranks as number 4 for U.S. cities as far as high-tech job growth is concerned. So again, those many opportunities continue to expand, and we're trying to create bridges and link our students to know more about those, to participate in those. Here's a beautiful shot of the skyline of Indianapolis from our campus, as well as an example from one of our peer mentors talking about how they enjoyed their time in Indianapolis. So you really can see how close we are to the downtown area, and a beautiful view of how green our campus is as well. For anyone on the call today who would like to learn more about our programs or the application, please do connect with our office. We currently have the application period open for fall 2024. As well as spring 2024. So this is a little bit more about what students would need to submit to apply to academic programs on our campus. I'll leave this here as well. So this QR code will take you to our link tree where you can take a virtual campus tour, hear a little bit more about our programs, chat with current students, and we'd love to hear from you. So if you have any questions about admissions process, academic programs, campus, or our city, please reach out to us at iApply iupui.edu. And thanks for listening to a little bit more about our campus. I want to jump back over to questions and connect a little bit more and hear more from Thomas. So pardon rushing through that, but we are excited to hear from you. So with that, Thomas, let's jump back over to the core of the bulk of the conversation today and learn a little bit more from you. Could you please tell us a little bit more about, let me pull up the questions here. Oh, perfect. Can you please tell us more about the study abroad program you mentioned, and have the trips, going back, I think you said 6 times, has that really helped to build a connection? And what have you noticed from that experience, please?
Yeah, so the study abroad in Paros is the oldest study abroad on campus. It has been around for a very long time. But before our school took it over for video production, I think it was more archaeology oriented. So it was taken over by our school before I got here. And then it was taught by another faculty member, and then I came on. I forget what the first year was, 2015, I think it was. And we have some people who help us there on the ground, our contacts there, and who help us figure out some story possibilities that we can choose from. And we've definitely formed a sense of community there, having gone back so many times and seeing a lot of change with every trip that we take. The island changes, but we'll be walking down the street and people will recognize us. We'll arrive and we're like, "Hey, I know you," and they recognize us coming back, and they've gone and seen the films for years. So it's like people you don't even know are just calling you out, which is great. So that's been a lot of fun. And I think just building, students get a lot of satisfaction from just making these films about the island. And then we basically give them to use any way they want. So one of the people that we are strongly connected with runs a thing called Digital Paros that helps promote the island. They're very interested in promoting it in a sustainable way, as opposed to what happens to some of the other Greek islands that are overrun with tourism. So there's a strong movement of sort of environmental sensibility and a sensibility towards sustaining a certain way of life or quality of life on the island. So we look to those kinds of stories often. The person who we work with very closely was just in the New York Times. It was funny, just a few months ago, I was reading a New York Times article, and it was about how so many of the hotels are putting out chase lounges on the beach and charging for it, which they're not allowed to do. They're breaking the law doing it. So he was actually instrumental in organizing these protest movements against that, and was quoted quite extensively in the New York Times. So it was kind of fun to read the Times article and say, Nicholas, we know Nicholas. And so we might do a story on that. I don't know, when we go back this summer, we might do a story on that. We don't know. Mm-hmm. We know shortly before we get there, we have a pretty good sense of what they might be, but sometimes it's very loose, and you're working with people who are very kind of laid back and island life. So you have to get there, and then when you're there in person, you get down to business. And yeah, it's been very rewarding for me personally, and very rewarding to the students. They often hear from the students that it's a life-changing event for them. Many of our students, they've never been out of the country. I had one student one year had never been out of Indiana. So to go from never being out of Indiana to Greece is a big deal.
Oh, beautiful. So I'm going to combine 2 questions that I see here. So could you share a little bit more, maybe some examples of how students get involved filming around Indianapolis? And then what advice would you have for someone in their early career stages to connect in the field, to go in this direction? Maybe a few folks on our call are going to be high school students. So how can they move forward in this direction professionally?
Yeah. So I think one of the important things to me is students' confidence, building their confidence level. You might recall I said at Kent State I was intimidated, right? That informs the way I teach and the way I run that program, being very conscious of making people feel like they belong and not being intimidated. Because I realized there's a lot of technology involved in this that can be pretty scary to people. A lot of the students in video who come in have no experience. They've chosen it, but they have no experience. So it can be a steep thing to learn about f-stops and ISOs and how to light this and that. And so I don't want people to be put off. I want them to feel that there is someone who is investing in their confidence, and then taking that confidence and parlaying that into, an entry into the field. So there are a lot of opportunities in this town, like so many cities now. It's not just on the coasts. There's a lot of production, everywhere. And in our city, in Indianapolis, we're a big sports city. We end up with students working like the Pacers and stuff. And we're also a big pharmaceutical town. So there's a lot of production around both of those, but there's also just a lot of storytelling in general, wherever you are. So the internship that I was referring to is another sort of first step into making that transition, where students are building their social capital. It's so much about who you meet, how you impress them with your professionalism and with your ambition, and learning all those sort of soft skills that help build your network and build your social capital. And I tell students, it starts when you're in school with your classmates. Yeah, you might not be able to make this masterpiece of a film because it costs a certain amount of money or it's prohibitive in some way. But what you can be doing right now is building that social capital and getting involved. We have a student video club called MacGuffin Media, and they make films and they do all sorts of things. So getting involved in that so that you're building your network, you're doing projects outside of the classroom. So in addition to the assignments, you're making videos on your own or with the club. So you're just constantly getting that experience, learning in the process, building onto your reel, getting those things together so that when you graduate, you're ready. And we have these courses. One's called N299. It's a portfolio class, and 399. There are these classes that you're required to take that are very much career-oriented, refining your resume, all these things that are geared toward making sure that you are ready professionally when you graduate to get a job. So those are two really important courses for building your portfolio and just developing your career readiness.
Excellent.
And then this is the thing about people in our film, not just video, but MAS in general. It is largely a freelance type of employment. There are, of course, many companies that have stuff in-house, and you can land one of those jobs. But a lot of students start off and they're freelance. They're doing contract work. So they're building a network too by going from one freelance job to another, building up different types of experience, making themselves sort of more professionally valuable. So it just starts with getting that first job that you can then parlay into the next thing.
Excellent.
And I get emails all the time asking, do you have a student who can do this? Or do you have a graduate who do this? On a weekly basis, I get these emails. So I'm always saying, okay, who's qualified to do that? Hey, do you want to do this? And I pass it off. And then they can seize that opportunity and run with it.
I always love hearing about those moments where you can lift up students and open the doors for future opportunities. Taking a look at the time here, it does look like an hour has flown by. So I just wanted to pause and say a big thank you to you, Thomas, for all of your information, your story, your perspective on the call today. I'd encourage all of the folks who have joined us to please stay connected, reach out. Let us know if you have additional questions that we haven't had time to answer today. We'd love to hear from you. Again, we'll have additional webinars in the spring. Stay connected with us and look for those topics and dates coming soon. But we will end here today with just a big thank you, Thomas. Thanks to all who joined us, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. All the best from Indianapolis.
Yes, thank you, everybody. It was a lot of fun.